What is up, you guys? Welcome to part 5 of the Football Frame of Mind Time Machine. I'm your boy Cam. You already know Football Frame of Mind. So, we've been going through the 60s, going through it all, man. The Super Bowls, the stats, the players, some of the coaches. We've been doing all of that, going back in time. And, excuse me, really just getting a deep dive into the NFL at this time, man. You see the league changing. We are like literally like a year away from like the merger being complete, where it becomes the NFL, the National Football League, instead of the National Football League and the American Football League. You're starting to see these teams. There are more teams coming into the league. I think you had the Saints, then you had the Falcons in the 60s as well join, right? You have the Bengals join, which is the ultimate comeback story of Paul Brown, right? When he was kicked out of ownership and really kicked out of his main job, which was, the Cleveland Browns, his namesake team. But he comes back with a vengeance and is the owner, head coach, GM, all of that of the Bengals, right? And really interesting scenario there. So we're into it, man. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And here we go. Let's get it. So we're going to finish this up strong. So here we go, man. We are in 1969. So forgive me, I was doing a little research. We'll get into that, right? But 69 is such a good year, man. Such a good year. So if you've been watching the show the last few episodes at this point, you know how I feel about Roman Gabriel, right? Roman Gabriel was drafted really high early in the 60s and was really coming into his own, right? He was learning and everything. And I believe this would have been his best season, in a sense. Like his best season, in terms of win total, in terms of just being a true superstar of the league, right? This was his true coming out party. Well, not coming out party. I'd say 67 was his coming out party, but this stamped him as one of the league's best quarterbacks. He wins MVP, 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, man, 2,500 yards, man, going crazy with it, like, and, got 5 rushing touchdowns, like one of the best seasons ever, for a Rams quarterback, you know. Um, he did his thing, man. They had some good teams, man. I think this was probably peak LA Rams because there was a lot of stuff going on, The league was changing, about to do the merger. So the 60s is coming to a close, and a lot of the teams that were bad are now about to come up there, right? So Calvin Hill wins Offensive Rookie of the Year, playing for Dallas, right? 8 touchdowns, 900 yards. He was doing his thing, receiving as well. So definitely, end up turning out to be a pretty good player, in terms of Pro Bowls and then all pros and all of that. So he turned out to be a pretty good pro, right? So they got a lot of bang for their buck, man. But the most important person on this list of award winners is this guy, Mean Joe Green, the North Texas product, man. Wow. You talk about one of the greatest players to ever play the game. Wins Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, right? This is a player of true dominance, of true nastiness, taking, the league by storm in year one, you know, just being as good as he was, right? And when you think about being picked by the Pittsburgh Steelers in 69, it was important. This was important, because historically the Steelers haven't been good, but 69 was a good year for them. You think about it. The Steelers, 65. Like when we started this whole thing, right? This whole time machine thing, the Steelers were terrible. Terrible. Terrible in 1960. Terrible in 1961. Okay in 1962, right? But then back to kind of mediocre, then really get mediocre, they went through a couple coaches, right? Buddy Parker gets fired after 64. Mike Nixon, they were terrible. Terrible. Fired after one season. Look at that. Boom. Just horrible, right? Horrible. 5-8-1. Nasty. 4-9-1. Nasty. And then Bill Austin goes 2-11-1. Disgusting. But things changed in 1969, okay? They changed for the better, all right? And who knows what possessed them to hire, Chuck Noll. Like, who knew how good that hire was? But that changed everything for the Steelers. Absolutely everything for the Steelers. They got a leader with a vision, right? And when you have somebody that understands how to build a team, right? On the field per se, not off the field, but drafting is important. And for them to do that, it's quite good. You know what I'm saying? Quite good. For them to do that, it's quite good. So you can't sit there and say, oh well, they got lucky or whatever. No, they didn't get lucky at all. They really did their thing, right? And they went through it. As you see, throughout the history that I just went through. Like, they've been bad. And 69 was a horrible season. It was bad. It was really bad. But as I mentioned, things got better. Now, let's look at the draft itself. Okay? 69 was a really good draft. Okay? You start off with the number 1 overall pick, the Juice. The Juice is O.J. Simpson, right? If you guys don't know who that is, that's O.J. Simpson, right? O.J. Simpson is one of the greatest running backs to ever play, right? Yes, everybody knows he's famous for his off-the-field things. But on the field, he was a bad motherfucker, okay? Right? Off the field, he was a bad motherfucker too, but on the field, he was a really, really bad motherfucker, man. Came in the league gunning, going hard, right? Doing this thing. And then you go Mean Joe Green at 4, right? And then the greatest quarterback that never was, and Greg Cook. I believe I mentioned this on another episode. Greg Cook, from all accounts at the time, he was one of the first can't miss prospects, like, Peyton Manning-esque, IQ, big arm, right? Ability to move in the pocket. Like he had everything. And when you look at his first year before the shoulder injury, you can tell there was something good about Greg Cook, right? Being on a team that's kind of bad, right? You're on a team that's kind of bad. So you're trying to figure things out, right? But you can tell he's got the touchdown to excuse me. Excuse me. He's got the touchdown to interception ratio that you like for a young quarterback, right? So there's some good, but he had a shoulder injury, right? And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was a torn rotator cuff or something like that. Like it wasn't, like today's medicine. I think he would have tore his rotator cuff, and they probably would have, immobilized it, did all of that. But this is like 1969. Medicine hasn't evolved yet. So certain injuries in football are career enders at this particular juncture, and it sucked because, it kind of robbed us of a pretty good player, right? But those who know that Greg Cook was going to be that one, right? But I will say that um, Greg Cook had a bigger arm, and then I want to say the backup kind of didn't have a big arm. So uh, Paul Brown and I want to say Bill Walsh came together and created what is now known as the West Coast offense to better help that quarterback that they had at the time succeed. And everybody knows the West Coast offense is either a check down or a touchdown, either way. So that created what is now known as the West Coast offense, right? So, say Greg Cook doesn't get hurt, we might not see that revolutionary offense that for a while was the staple of if you were going to be a good quarterback or not. If you could run the West Coast offense, you was going to be a good quarterback. And if you ran it in college, you could probably run it in the pros, right? You knew what you was doing. So who knows how things work out, man. But like I said, you end up with Roger Worley, another Hall of Famer, right? I feel like I heard the name Bill Stanfield before. I feel like I heard that before. Yeah. So he's got almost 70 sacks. He's got 100 sacks. So it really ended up being some really good players, in this particular draft. So, like, that's pretty cool if you ask me, right? Like I said, 69 is a very important year for the league, man. It's important, right? So, but let's get into some stats, man. Well, first let's get into some standings. Let's get into some standings. So, obviously the league is now like, full. We're at 4, 8, 12, 16 teams across the thing. So we got Minnesota in there, in one of their good, I'd say one of their good spurts in franchise history. We'll say that. One of their good spurts in franchise history, where, they've won. Bud Grant's there, and he has a whole lot of what you say wins in their franchise history. So this is a good time for them, right? The Rams, as I mentioned, with Roman Gabriel. The Browns are still good, you know. So, and then the Cowboys, you start to see teams that'll carry you into the 70s, right? Right? the Cowboys are one of those teams in the 70s that was pretty good, right? You start to see some stuff, man. The Saints improved, right? And Minnesota is obviously, good. But this is also still the NFL, right? So they're still a big dog when it comes to things. But as I mentioned in the last video, 68, the AFL got their respect by winning Super Bowl III. So now you really have to pay attention when you talk about, oh, well, they're just the AFL team. They don't really matter. No. After the Jets won Super Bowl III, you had to start respecting them AFL teams. So as we get into that, man. So like I said, Cowboys win the Capital, Browns win the Century Division, the Rams win the Coastal, and obviously the Minnesota Vikings win the Central, right? So let's get into some stats, man. Let's see who was leading whatever. You know what I'm saying? So Sonny Jurgensen, obviously, like I mentioned in a couple other videos, man, he is one of the best passers of his era, especially when it comes to the forward pass, right? But he's really good, but he just was on some bad teams. That's all. But this was his best season. Otto Graham was the coach of the Skins. Really? Wow. I didn't know that. I didn't know he was a coach of the Skins. How long was he there? Yeah, I want the coach. So he was damn, so he didn't coach that long? Damn. I would have expected him with all the championships he won to be a coach for a while, right? When did he retire? I was trying to see. When did he retire? So, as a player. Otto Graham as a player. So he retired in 55. So he retired in 55. So he coached so it took him like 10 years to get up. Okay. I was just curious. I was like, damn, I didn't know he did that. All right. So Otto Graham, but 69 was probably the best season Sonny Jurgensen really had, in my opinion. Like if we really being honest, I think that's one of the best seasons that he's had as you say, as a Washington Redskins quarterback, should I say, right? But it was important to mention that improvement came as Vince Lombardi put back on his coaching whistle. Okay? He put back on his coaching whistle and he worked it out, right? He got the itch again, right? Won them 3 titles in a row. Well, actually, I think he won like 5. But he won 3 in a row, right? To close out his tenure with the Packers, right? So then he took the job in Washington, D.C., right? He took that job and instantly improved the Skins, especially from their season prior. So, like I said, when I say that, oh my God, this is probably his best season, it really is. Like, this is one of the best seasons he's had. Because you think, like, he wasn't necessarily, like I said, it wasn't the best thing. But you can't tell me that Sonny Jurgensen wasn't one of the best quarterbacks of his era. Right? The teams were just bad. You go from 4-8 to 7-5-2. Imagine if Vince Lombardi had more time. But imagine if Vince Lombardi had more time. How good Washington would have been. You know, um, damn, I could just see them actually winning a lot more if he had more time. But like I said, this is kind of the last year Sonny Jurgensen was like good, but for him to lead the league in passing at 35 years old is really good, man. Really, really good. Like, like you can't tell me a guy, you know, that Vince Lombardi didn't have a great success with him, right? But you also see Fran Tarkenton. Fran Tarkenton is still one of the best quarterbacks in the league. 29 at the time, still good, still making Pro Bowls, right? Everything, man, everything. So you see that, and that's good. As I mentioned, Roman Gabriel, MVP of the league, right? Led the league in touchdowns, had a good interception ratio, right? So Bill Nelson, Pro Bowler, Sonny Jurgensen, another guy that's good. Bart Starr, right? He's still playing, but not the same at all, right? Then you think of guys that you may not have heard of if you're kind of a youngster or not into football. But I tell you what, Bobby Douglas is one of the greatest mobile quarterbacks that nobody really talks about, right? Obviously not the best passer, but in terms of running the ball, he was quite good running the ball, specifically in 1972, right? 1972 is the greatest year for a quarterback rushing the football for a while. Like nobody touched that record until Michael Vick did it. Nobody. So that record stood until about 2005, right? That was the highest rushing total you would have for a quarterback until like 2005, 2006. So just to let you know, he was getting it, but he wasn't the best quarterback, in terms of quarterbacking. But mobile, he was definitely that, right? But here's one important thing that people don't really pay attention to. Roger Staubach came over to the Cowboys, right? He was originally drafted in in 1964, but you see what school he went to. He went to Navy, enlisted in the service, and had to fulfill his military commitment. So what, 4 years in, 4 or 5 years in, he finally is now the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, right? He's also a Heisman winner. He was quite good. We all know that. And he ended up being one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play, right? But it's interesting. He had to earn his stripes. And when he earned them stripes, it looked beautiful. Looked beautiful. But he had to earn them stripes, man. He had to earn them stripes, and he got them. He earned them stripes in the battlefield, and he earned them stripes on the football field. So that's an interesting name too to have on there, right? Dan Reeves is still there. So there you go. Interception leader is Norman Snead from Philly, but then you got Johnny Unitas, who's still playing, still playing, still out there gunning. Obviously, he's lost a step significantly, but he's the starter again, and he looks really good. He looks really, really good. So there you go. He looks really, really good, man. So Let me see. Hold up. Yeah. So there you go, man. So 69 wasn't the best for him, but then you got Brody still doing Brody things. I mean, obviously, he, is still good. He's still one of the best passers in the league, even at 34, right? His numbers aren't there. They're losing games. It looks really, really bad for the 49ers right now. But it doesn't matter. He's still out there doing his job, man. So you can't be mad at that. You can't be mad at that. So let's see. Let's get into some rushing stats, man. Let's see. So the leading rusher in 1969 is Gale Sayers, right? We talked about Gale Sayers' career cut way too short because of injuries. And, after this was kind of it. This was his swan song, to say the least, for his career, basically. After that, I think 70 and 71, he had two really nasty knee injuries. Now, I can honestly say that he would have, in today's medicine, I think he would have had an even longer career. But this is the 1960s, early 70s. So medicine's not there, right? In terms of the knee injury, recovery from certain injuries, right? In this era, tuberculosis could take you out, like it's a era where medicine was getting better, but not as good as it is today, right? So there you go. It's unfortunate, but he did lead the league in rushing in 1969. Calvin Hill, Rookie of the Year, did his thing, man. Right? Tom, I want to say, I don't know if that's Matt or Mati. They called him Garbage Can. He called him Garbage Can, man. That's wild. But he's also good, right? Dallas has some. That's not Dallas, but Dallas has some good running backs, man. Over the history of their team, man. Yeah, they had some good running backs, man. You got Calvin Hill. He had a couple 1,000-yard season. Then you got Dwayne Thomas. He was really good. Then you got Dorsett. He was good. Then obviously Emmett, right? Zeke, DeMarco Murray. Like, they've had some really, really good running backs, man. Really, really good running backs. So, like, their lineage is pretty good, man. Cannonball Butler. Let's talk about Cannonball Butler. I don't even know who that is. But name alone, he's a baller, right? So I like it. Leroy Kelly, man, we talked about him. All pro, led the league in rushing, 66, 67, 68, right? Touchdown leader 3 years in a row. So, he did his thing, man. 74 touchdowns for his career. That's gotta be up there with the list of runners still today. That's gotta be like top 30, top 40 all time. So, like, that's still pretty good. So that just lets you know how good he was, Let me see. Touchdowns leader was Mati, Garbage Can. Let's see. So yeah, man. So let's get into some receiving yards, man. So we get into this thing. Harold Jackson, right? Led the league in receiving. Pretty damn good. I like that. Like I said, he didn't do no running for real, man, like that. I was thinking, like, damn, he got a lot of stuff, but no, he did pretty good, man. He did pretty good, pretty damn good, man. So you can't, you can't, you know, you can't discredit that. That's pretty good. Like I said, he's a solid receiver, period, right? Especially throughout the 70s. He seemed like he kept a job. But like I said, I mean, he was good all really all the way until the damn 80s. Solid receiver, man. I think any receiver that gets 10,000 receiving yards is on that list of pretty good receivers. 5-time Pro Bowler, All Pro, right? So pretty damn good. Another person on the list is Roy Jefferson, right? And a team that's like necessarily had a really good lineage of receivers is Pittsburgh. You add this guy to the equation, right? Then you add John Stallworth, right? Lynn Swan. Then you go into like the later years, Plexico Burris, Hines Ward, Mike Wallace, Santonio Holmes, Antonio Brown, right? Juju Smith Schuster had his run, right? And then George Pickens now of today, right? He just left. And now you got DK Metcalf, right? That is a crazy lineage of receivers, right? That have come through Pittsburgh, man. So that's crazy. But he, 68, he led the league in receiving, right? 69, 1,000 yards again, right? Which is surprising they got rid of him or let him go. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done that at all. But they might have gotten rid of him. They might have used him as a draft. I would love to find out. I would love to find out how they got rid of him or why. Because it makes sense because the Steelers were kind of bad that season, right? They were bad, right? So I would love to find out why they did it. Not necessarily sure why. But you see some good names on there. Charlie Taylor, Paul Warfield, right? Bob Hayes, still doing his thing. Charlie Sanders, one of the best tight ends that don't nobody talk about. Jackie Smith still on the list. He's good. And he ain't even got to Dallas yet. So, that's good. Right? You see some running backs on here. Garbage Can is on there. Tom Matee is on there, right? You're looking like you're so much good players, man. So much. Cannonball Butler is on the list. Like, so many good players, man, on the list, right? Lance Redzel, right? 12 touchdowns, taking the top off the defense. Dallas has some shit, bro. Imagine having two receivers average 22 yards per reception. Because Bob Hayes was cold as hell, right? So, nasty work, man. No wonder they won so many damn games. But let's check out some defense, man. All right, so the sack leader was Carl Eller, man. And if you know Carl Eller was good, man. He was good on the Vikings, man. Gosh, he was good, man. Like one of the best. The purple people eaters, man. They had Jim Marshall on there, man. Alan Page, as I mentioned in the last video. This is just the beginning for him. This is the beginning. He hasn't even scratched the surface of how good he would be. That will come in a couple years, right? When he wins Defensive Player of the Year and League MVP. So that just lets you know how good he was, right? But this is still Deacon Jones's era, man. And man, the sack king, that unofficial sack king, should I say? The unofficial sack king, man. is still doing his thing, man. He's obviously slowing down a little bit. He's in his 30s, right? He's not the 26-year-old head slapper, quarterback destroyer that he once was. But 15 sacks let you know that he's still at the top of his game, right? So interception leader was Mel Renfro, Dallas, right? Doing his thing. Lim Barney, he's playing on Detroit. He's keeping his interception streak going. But you see, like, interceptions are high, right? I think one thing that I've noticed throughout doing this whole thing, this whole time machine thing, is that the interceptions are high, right? And that's only one reason, because a quarterback play is horrible, right? In terms of accuracy, there's some good dudes, but it's far in between. Like, the quarterbacks haven't gotten better yet. That's why a lot of people are getting interceptions. You feel me? So, because I was like, damn, every year somebody got like 10, 7, 9, 5. I'm like, fuck, they just picking off everything. But you got to remember that the quarterback play isn't as good as it is now, right? But of course, Paul Krause is in there, right? He's good. Kermit Alexander, he's been on here a couple times. Bob Jeter, he was on there. Willie Wood, 33, he's good. Roger Worley, one of those guys that's really good, man. Dick Butkus is in there, he's 27. He's a first team All Pro. Ray Nitschke, 33. He's, still playing. So, like, you look at Herb Adderley, right? This is crazy. So, but as I mentioned, this is the last year of before the merger takes complete effect. So we still got to talk about the AFL. So the AFL was won by, I want to say, yeah, the AFL was won by the Chiefs this year. But the Raiders, but the Raiders won, the home field advantage. So they were the best team. The Jets won as well. So we already know that Joe Namath is there. But Daryl LaMonica wins MVP again. So this is the second time he's won MVP of the AFL. So he's good. Way more solid than George Blanda, right, in terms of the interception touchdown ratio, but still a lot of interceptions. 35, 24, 34, 25. I mean, like, but he leads the league in passing, he leads the league in touchdowns, also leads the league in interceptions, right? But nonetheless, he got the Raiders going. They was going hard, man, right? Then you look at the Jets at this particular time. Joe Namath is Joe Namath, right? This is one of the best seasons he's had, in his career so far. 19 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, not the best, but damn certainly not the worst. And they won 10 games, right? And won their respective division. The Dolphins aren't good, but they would have a lot to say in the 70s, right? The Chiefs are still good, led by, the man himself. Len Dawson is still here. 34-year-old Len Dawson, got to the first Super Bowl, didn't really do much, right? But also, one thing to consider here, he's fighting for his career, honestly, because Mike Livingston went 6-0, during his starts. So you would think, hey, look, you keep fucking up, I'm going to take your spot. But, it took a while for him to do that. Let's just say that. When it was his show, it might have been just a little too late for him. But, all things being considered, He was fighting for his career at this point, man, because I'm pretty sure the young dude was kind of feeling himself a little bit, which happens. It happens a lot. I've seen it with, the Broncos and Brock Osweiler, right? Going against Peyton Manning, right? Everybody's like, man, Brock the dude. But Peyton Manning got the mental capacity right now. He got the experience, been in the trenches, stuff like that. So you see that, and it matters, right? So let's look at some stats before we get into the playoffs, man, and we finish this up. So obviously, Daryl Lamonica leads the league, right? Joe Namath, second, second in touchdowns as well, right? Jack Kemp, the AFL champion, right? Multiple times. Careers coming to an end, but he finished as a Pro Bowler. So that counts. Bob Greasy, even though, like I mentioned, you got to think about a couple things here that I mentioned that Miami was, about to take the fuck off. The 70s was, especially the early 70s, was them. That was their time. That was their time to shine, bro. So, they're one of the toughest outs of the 70s. So, just because they struggled at first, they got it together like when the 70s came around. So, you look at guys like that, right? Bob Greasy looking good. Lynn Dawson still, doing him. We mentioned Greg Cook. Greg Cook was one of the best passers in the AFL this year. Top 5 in touchdowns, but also not being one of the worst quarterbacks in terms of interception. So when I say, like, damn, he would have been good, I really think so. George Blanda, right? Not the quarterback that he once was, right? But one of the best punters in the game. So, Tom Flores, right? He ends up getting traded this year. I want to say, who was that? From Buffalo to Kansas City, right? So, he ends up looking good, So there you go, right? He's still playing. Jim Nance, not the one we know, but Dickie Post led the league in rushing, right? Mike Garrett, Heisman winner. OJ Simpson, Heisman winner, right? He comes out gunning. Obviously, not the best season, but Buffalo really didn't have a good season to begin with. But that's okay. It happens, right? But there's some names on the list that you should know. Jim Kick, one of those dudes, that kind of rebuilt Miami, right? Larry Zonka, right? They start building this team up. Like they start building this team up, man. And you could see that they were doing something, right? They just needed the right person to put it all together, right? They also had a young Mercury Morris on this team. So when I say that the Dolphins were the team of the 70s in a sense that was kind of tough to beat, right? You have to look at these names, right? So you have you don't have a two-headed monster. You have a three-headed monster in the backfield. You got Mercury Morris, right, in all of his glory, right? Being a guy that gives you 5 yards a carry, right? And then you got Larry Zonka, and as nasty as he became, right? As nasty as he became, a tough guy to tackle, a big, nasty, bruising running back, all 6'3", 237 pounds. And Syracuse has a really underrated, lineage of running backs too, man. We're gonna have to get into that. But he was nasty. But the one person that really nobody talks about is Jim Kick, man. Nobody really talks about Jim Kick. But throughout their really run and at the top of the food chain, Jim Kick was one of those dudes, right? I would say maybe he's your short yardage back, but doesn't matter. He did his job, and they really, really were tough to stop on the ground, man. When you think about all three of them at the head, like at their heyday, that smells so tough to beat, bro. Like fuck, like what are we gonna do? They just keep running the ball on us, So, yeah, I like that. I like that, man. So, Warren Wells from Oakland is your leading receiver, man. And he had a lot of yards. He had a lot of yards in 68 as well, man. A lot of touchdowns as well. So he had a really flash in the pan type of career. But it didn't last much after that, unfortunately for him. But he had took the lead by storm, right? But Lance Allworth, Don Maynard, Fred Biletnikoff, these are your guys, bro. These are your guys that are good. You end up with Otis Taylor, one of those guys, Speedy Thomas. Like, I like that name. So you got a lot, man. You got a lot. Marlon Briscoe, who actually started as a quarterback, but turned out to be one of the best receivers in the NFL during his time. So, right? So you look at things like that. So I love that type of shit. Guys that like, hey man, I ain't afraid to play no other position. I'm good. I'll play that. So I like that. I like that a lot, man. Al Denson, right? That's pretty good. But Warren Wells went off, man. 26.8 yards a catch. Oh my God. That's filthy. That's filthy, man. That is dirty. Downright dirty. You doing stuff, bro. So Dickie Post. Let me see. Dickie Post. That was like his best season in the NFL. He didn't really do nothing after that. Surprisingly, though. Surprisingly. The NFL is one of those leagues, man, that if you don't win a Super Bowl when you got it, or you don't cash in your chips when you're really good, the next year might be rough for you, man. It's tough. It's rare that people lose the Super Bowl or have good seasons, right? And the NFL don't adjust to it. It's rare. Usually they adjust to it. So we got Emmett Thomas, man, one of the best defensive backs in his era, man. And then he was just scratching the surface on how good he would become. So, like, this is, that's one of the ones right there, right? Johnny Robinson, I've seen him on a couple lists. Miller Farr, I've seen him on a couple lists. He was first overall pick of the AFL Red Shirt draft, right? So he was good. Speedy Duncan. Let's see. We got some sacks. What we got sacks, man? Steve DeLong. I like that. I like that. He's good. So the Chargers, man. What Chargers good? 8-6 with Sid Gilman. Okay. So he coached, but I'm not sure what happened. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. Oh, he must have just got fired or something. But it seemed like they, under Charlie Waller, they end up winning a lot more games, right? And he got them to 1970. But that was it. They didn't do that. I think I seen. Oh, wow. Okay. So, Bum Phillips was a defensive coordinator on this particular staff. Nice. Nice. Everybody knows Bum from his Houston Oilers days, the Love You Blue days. And he ended up being pretty good, man. Yeah, Wade Phillips was obviously, really, really good as a coach too. So there you go. There you go, man. So that's your AFL, man. So let's go into the playoffs, man. Let's see what we got. So Minnesota, the Rams, the Browns, and the Cowboys all make the playoffs, right? So Minnesota is the number one seed in a sense. So, they have a tough game. They have a tough game going against the MVP of the league and Roman Gabriel. But they prevail. They prevail. Um, they prevail and they get the win. But the Rams had the lead in the fourth quarter and they just choked it away. But they end up getting it. And Minnesota goes on to destroy the Cleveland Browns, uh, who actually were good. They were good. They had a good run. They had a really good run. Especially 60, like from 60, well, shit, when Blatton Collier took over in 63, they had a good run, including the championship in 64. 65, they were good. 66, they were good. 67, they were good. 68, 9. And then he left. Man. He left, and that was it, man. He was 64 at the time. But being a high school coach, a college coach, an NFL assistant, and then an NFL head coach, and having the success that he did, I think he did pretty good, don't you think? So I think he had a really good career, man. So as I mentioned, the Cleveland took care of the Cowboys, right? And then the AFC, what do you say, the NFL championship game, which is like conference championship weekend now. The Vikings took over and they won that game. Pretty much beat Cleveland up, and Cleveland couldn't do a damn thing. All right. And then, there you go. And then the Vikings are your representatives for the NFL in the Super Bowl, right? So then we go to the AFL side, and Oakland is your team to beat because they're number one, right? Close game. The Chiefs end up having with the Jets, right? But Lynn Dawson wins it. They win it late, and they beat They beat who's that? Joe Namath and the Jets. They beat them fair and square. Lynn Dawson gets his team to do what it do. Simple as that, man. Oakland takes care of Houston. Oof, that wasn't close at all, man. God damn, that was a beatdown. Daryl Monica wasn't playing, but the Chiefs at this time had some really good defensive players, man. I gotta give them some shout out, man. Bobby Bell, Buck Buchanan, Curly Culp. Like these are good players, bro. Willie Lanier, like they had a really, really good defense, bro. Like these are all good players. And for them to play defense like that and stop Oakland after they just dropped 56 the week prior, that's crazy. Like that's letting you know, like, yo, we about to get this. But I can't go on to the Super Bowl without mentioning that John Madden, this is his first season with the Oakland Raiders. And boy, did it work. Wow. Obviously, Oakland had to go through some things in terms of the Steelers at this particular time. And, excuse me, they had to go through the Steelers. They had to go through the Dolphins at this time. But they finally punched through in 76, right? But they started it off. John Madden started this big turnaround, man. So I can't go on without talking about that. But Hank Stram, man, at this point, he is he's the Kansas City man, he's a Kansas City guy, right? They've been there, they've lost some Super Bowls, they've won some AFL titles. Like, now it's time for him to cash in at this point, man. He has some really good. I mean, if you weren't going to win with Len Dawson, like now, then you probably weren't going to win with Len Dawson, right? I think this was the time to cash in, and they got it done. They have some really good players too, especially on defense, like I mentioned. So, like I said, but we get into Super Bowl IV, Super Bowl IV, right? And you start to see the string of titles the AFC started to win. The AFL started to win at this point, right? And this was the last Super Bowl between, both leagues, because the merger happens the next season. But this Super Bowl takes place in New Orleans, Tulane Stadium. And the Chiefs get out to a big lead, 9-0, right? 16-0, actually. And then the Vikings come back, but then Len Dawson throws a touchdown, and then it's over, bro. It's over. It's over after that. They get it. I actually want to see something. Does he have a sibling? Because I feel like I've seen that name before. I feel like I've seen that name, like, in another game. Does he have a sibling? Oh, never mind. They just played them. My bad. It happens, man. But nonetheless, the Minnesota Vikings, I want to say this is their first Super Bowl loss. They got 4 of them, but this is the first one, I believe. Yeah, this is their first one. But Grant lost 4 of them. But they also got to 4 of them, so you can't really be like, haha, you never won. But guess what, motherfuckers? Some of you motherfuckers ain't never got to one either. So I don't want to hear it. Yeah, it's tough to win a Super Bowl, but the Vikings did their thing, man. They did their thing and just came up short, honestly. Just came up short, man. I mean, they obviously got better when Fran Tarkenton returned to Minnesota. But the Chiefs were on a mission, man, and it seemed like the Chiefs of 1969, bro. They weren't playing on defense, bro. Like, they literally averaged 12 points a game. You weren't doing anything. You weren't beating them. You weren't beating them. And another thing why I say that Greg Cook was one of the best, like, Greg Cook beat this defense, man. A defense that only gave up 12 points the whole season. He dropped 24 on them. So that's how you know how good he was going to be, right? All right, so there you go, man. Now they all obviously returned the favor later on that season, right? By dropping 42 on them. But see how good he was going to be. And they really clowned. I mean, the playoff run itself was actually pretty damn impressive, if you ask me. Right? You give 6, 7, and 7. So what is that? 20 points throughout the whole playoff run. Right? That's crazy. Crazy work. But the Chiefs win a Super Bowl. Lamar Hunt gets his first championship, pretty much as the architect of this whole merger. Right, of this whole merger. He started out, right? And he got a championship, man. Right? He's one of the most important people in NFL history, man. Like I said, he's the founder of the Chiefs. He's the owner of the Chiefs, right? All the way, all the way until 2006, when he ultimately passed away, and then his family took over the team. But yeah, dog. The Chiefs, after winning this Super Bowl, I mean, they won the AFL championship in '63. They won a Super Bowl. They also obviously lost the first Super Bowl. But, it was tough throughout the 70s. It was kind of tough throughout the 70s, man. So, they obviously made a comeback in the 90s with Marty Ball. I want to say that it was Marty Ball. Y'all let me know if I'm tripping. Yeah, they made a comeback in the 90s, right, with Marty Ball. But they had a tough time getting over John Elway. That was tough. But I mean, for 1969 was good, was really good, right? But this marks the end of pretty much our time machine throughout this decade, right? From 60 to 70, right? We'll pick things up on the next round of episodes when these all come out. Probably a start, preparing for our show Sunday for tomorrow. But this is gonna be fun, man. I really like doing this. And we're gonna talk about a lot of stuff, man, because just as fun as the 60s were, the 70s were just as fun as well. So we're gonna get into it, man. So just so y'all know, like I said, we're gonna get into that, right? The NFL merger has happened, and now we got a whole lot, we got a whole lot to talk about. We got a whole NFL now. This is what we know. This is the league that we know. This is the teams that we know. These are all of where we are today, right? So it's going to be fun getting into the 70s, man. I can't wait. I hope you guys really enjoy these as we go through the time machine, man. So I want y'all to really enjoy what we do. Me and Brandon work really hard on our content, man, no matter what it is that we're doing. Live streams, community posts, doesn't matter, man. We really love what we do. But we can't do it without you guys. So like and subscribe. Keep commenting, keep supporting, and keep sharing our stuff, man. We really appreciate it. But I am your boy Cam, and this has been part 5 of the Football Frame of Mind Time Machine. I'll check you out on the next one. See you later.